Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast, Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And today we're talking about continuity theory. We're talking about our older folks. I'm not there yet. Our parents' generation is there, and we're heading up behind them. So, continuity theory, as described by the gerontologist Robert Archley, emphasizes people's need to maintain a connection between past and present. And that's important because you have to think about you have a continuous life. There are people who move away from home, and their past life and their present life is, so different that they have cognizant dissonance, and so they might try to, get pictures or go visit the old home place, and things like that. We've drove by different places that I used to live when I was younger, to kind of have that feeling of continuity. You started out at point A, you went to B, C, D, E, F, and that's important in a life. Otherwise, you feel disjointed. You feel like, oh, this was this and that is that, and they're two different. And like I say, that can make you feel like you have some cognizant dissonance, that your life is not a continuous strain. So if you find yourself in that position, I would say, you probably should talk to someone about that, find you a nice therapist, and, make an effort to, connect the past and the present. Because if you can do that, then you're going to feel like you've had a nice continuous life. In this view, activity is important not for its own sake, but to the extent that it represents the continuation of a lifestyle. And that, is important to people. Like I say, a lot of people get depression and things because they stop working and then they're just sitting there doing nothing. They miss what they were doing. They don't have the connections that they had with the people that they worked with and everything. And that is a problem, for most old people. But what you need to do is, like I say, get involved in something else. If, I can't do what I used to do anymore. I can't drive around and go to offices, go to places, community centers and, schools and the colleges, and I can't do that anymore. Because I can't drive that far and then either sit or stand for long periods of time, without having back spasms, and that's definitely painful enough to make me want to stop that. I do as I can here, so I'm teaching online instead of in a classroom, and it's not the same. I do miss my students. I still have a lot of students that became my friends, and they're my friends on Facebook. A lot of the younger folks there are my students. So, hi. But I really enjoyed, teaching people things that I needed to learn. So, for me, doing this is a continuation of what I did before that I can't do now. And that's important, is to feel like you did something in your life and now you're continuing to have a life. Because if you feel like my life is over now once you retire, then again, you're going to be sitting there depressed and, probably become, what was that lady, Mrs. Kravitz on Bewitched, the nosy neighbor, was always looking out the window at everybody, and, you become like that. So that's not who you want to be. For older adults who always have been active and involved, it may be important to continue a high level of activity. And again, that's with adults who have been active and involved. They're going to want to keep them, active and involved and do things. Like I say, I know people who, I know actually have two women who've told me they do their housework early in the morning, get it done, and then they sit around and watch, dramas all day. I would go crazy if I had to do that. I would just go, but that's just me. Because I was always active and involved in stuff, so I can't sit there and do nothing. to me, that just gets me so bored, and it's just like such a waste of time. I mean, I'll watch a show while I'm eating my breakfast. Then when I'm done with that. I don't turn the TV back on till 8 o'clock that evening when we have family time and sit down and watch TV. Like I said, I have a schedule, and I do things. Every day after, I finish my breakfast. I turn my computer and phone on, like a quiet morning. That's what my kids joke, that I'm the hardest person in the world to get a hold of in the morning. I'm like, hey, I just tell people I don't do mornings. But I will get everything set up for the day. I will do my workout. I will take my shower. I will then do the household things, make sure the temperature's set right, open the blinds if I'm going to open them that day. Some days I don't because it's over 80 and we don't have central air, so I keep them closed. I spray the air freshener around. I feed we have a bird, and feed the bird, water the plants, check my calendar, see if there's anything that needs to be done and taken care of today. And then, I'll do my prayer and devotional and do the Bible readings and the wisdoms and this here, have a lesson plan for the day. And then afterwards, like Monday, I do writing. Tuesday, I do art. Wednesday, I play music or, something like that. Thursday, I do sewing. Friday, I do crafts. Saturday, when I am done with my housework, from like 5 to 6, I do crochet. I'm working on a hat for an older lady right now. But, that's because that's how I was before. That's what makes me feel like I'm doing something. I can't just sit and do nothing. I would go nuts. But there are people who that they like that. They want to sit and do nothing. And, if that's the way they were before, that's probably the way they're going to want to continue to be. So, again, you can't say everyone would benefit from being busy because they might not like it. Now, to me, that's a good day. If I was busy and got everything done in a day I really wanted to get done, that's a good day. If I had a lot of interruptions and couldn't get enough done that I wanted to get done, then I was like, meh, But I know that I don't have to do these things. So, as it rolls out, that's how it rolls out. So, I don't put any pressure on myself. And there are days I take off. I observe the religious calendar days. If it's a religious Sabbath, I observe the, Jewish days. Then, I will take that Sabbath because you don't get a lot of those. And, I'll do things that like I normally do on the Sabbath, like read and listen to music and stuff, downtime. So if your older folk is not active before, don't expect that you're going to get them to be active afterwards. So, like, as the saying goes about a leopard doesn't change its spots. So, older folks who were active and enjoyed that should probably continue that. And you can help them get into things. And if you're an older person and, like I say, Google search, look at your paper, there are things you can do. And if you're fine with sitting on the couch, watching TV, then that's what you need to do. So, it's just not for me. Many retired people are happiest pursuing work or leisure activities similar to those they have enjoyed in the past. And like I said, I had an example the other day. I made an anecdotal comment about this old man that was working at the grocery store. And evidently he used to, work somewhere, but he was really old and frail. I mean, just, shaky. And he was still working. And like I said, people was kind of worried about him because, he was so frail. And we're thinking, why is he doing this? But, evidently he enjoyed it. And, some older people, they'll get into doing stuff with charities or, get into arts and crafts circles and things like that. So again, it just depends on what you did before and what you want to continue to do. That's continuity. You are going to want to continue some things probably. And if not, then, that's okay too. You can pick up something new or, like I say, there are people who like to just veg out in front of the TV, and if that's what makes them happy, go for it. Women who have been involved in multiple roles, such as wife, mother, worker, and volunteer, tend to continue to have multiple roles and to reap the benefits as they age. And I fit into that category. I had, multiple roles. I was working and raising 3 sons, and then I had a ministry that I ran for 17 years. I had a charity that I helped to start that I was the executive director of for 9 years. And like I said, I was doing writing and art and crafts and different things like that, trying to bring in a little extra money, keep food on the table, and keep clothes on the boys, because kids grow fast, as you probably know. So I did have a lot of roles. So for me, once I become physically unable to do everything that I used to do, it was hard. I felt like at first I was depressed. I ended up, after my mother passed away, on antidepressants and anxiety meds, because, when I was starting to have problems with work, and she had a heart attack, and I was coming over there and helping her do laundry and stuff like that, so I felt like I still had a purpose. And then when she was no longer there, I felt like I didn't have a purpose, and it took me a while, probably a few months to, get back in the stride of things and say, well, here's what I could do, and here's what I could do, and here's what I could do. And so I continued to do those things, and I still had, some teaching jobs there for a while. And I would go out into the community. Like I said, I was a guest professor at a couple of local universities, U of L twice and Spalding twice. So, I was still able to do some things as I could do things. And that, to me, makes me happy. I like doing things. I don't like sitting still. I don't like, doing nothing. I get bored. And I've always been that way, I was always a little bit hyper. So, for me, just getting done what I need to get done and then sitting on my booty doesn't work. I can't do it. It's not me. I'm too hyper to do these things. On the other hand, people who have been less active may do better in the proverbial rocking chair, or the recliner, as the case, is with the people I know. But, if that's what makes you happy, that's what you do. I sit in the rocking chair. I have a little rocking chair over here. It's covered with books now, but it used to not be covered with books. And I used to sit in that rocking chair and read. That's when I was in the rocking chair. That's about the only time. And then, we're going to build a house down on our farm, and we're going to have a big picture window in the front. And we're going to have our rocking chairs with a little table there. And so, we'll, in the morning, probably drink our tea and Mountain Dew, as the case may be. That's my husband's drink of choice. And look at the birds and things like that while we sit there. So those would probably be the only times you ever find me in the rocking chair, unless I just get so physically gone that I have to be in there, and then that will probably make me sad too. I'll probably have to take a while to get over that. So, that's just me. If you are fine with that, then be fine like that. We had a neighbor, our best neighbor we ever had, lived across the street from us. And he sat in his chair outside almost all day, except for when it was really cold or really hot. And he would hand feed the squirrels peanuts. He would talk to everybody in the neighborhood knew him. And that was what he did. He would sit out there on the porch and watch the world go by. That was his thing. So, everybody's different. When aging brings marked physical or cognitive changes, a person may become dependent on caregivers or may have to make new living arrangements. And like I say, that happens. My mother-in-law is going through that now. She got to the point where she can't walk more than 20 feet without falling down. She had a cane, then she had a walker. She's now got a wheelchair that she uses her feet to pedal herself around, at the assisted living place. And her dementia, they told her when she was in her, I guess it was 70s, that she had dementia after a stroke. And now she's, in her 90s, so it's not gotten any better. But like I said, there's a lot of confusion there, and there were starting to be some problems at the house. There were delivery people showing up and asking her a lot of personal questions, she said, and she didn't like that. And then, like, a couple weeks later, a police officer came to her house and supposedly found a shovel out in front of her house. She told us, but then one of the neighbors told a different story on while they were there. And then, supposedly she dug up some bamboo to give to the officer, and, things weren't making sense. And we know that she gave a bunch of money to a pastor that was on TV, and we know she bought a lot of things. So, it was starting to look not good. And then she started getting confused on, she had my middle son being my husband's little brother, and, she forgets, who she's seen and not seen. And like I say, now she's to the point where you can have the same conversation with her 3 and 4 times a day and she doesn't remember. So, it was time that, number one, the fire and rescue wasn't going to come pick her up anymore. They told my son happened to be the one that came that day, and they said, we know she wants to stay in her home, and we know you her family are trying to help her with that, but we're telling you, she can't do it anymore. We're over here 3 and 4 times a week now, picking her up out of the floor, and, we're going to call that elder engagement if we have to come back, and we're going to tell EMS the same thing. So that was a wake-up call to them, because they were just trying to do, be there for her and do what she wanted. They weren't thinking about, that kind of thing. But then that was a wake-up call for them. Say, well, we don't have anybody to come stay with her all the time that can pick her up, so we have to do something. So, when she fell, she ended up in the hospital. She had pneumonia and all that stuff. So instead of going back home, when she got out of the hospital, her oldest son took her to assisted living and has left her there. And she keeps asking when she's going to get to go home, and he keeps just saying, when you can walk by yourself the whole length of your house, which is about the length of the hall there. And of course she can't do it. So, she feels like she's been put in jail, as she calls it, but she's called her own home a jail. I feel like I'm in jail. Nobody's over here doing anything. I feel like I'm in jail all by myself. But, so that might happen to you as you age. You might be, mentally or physically disabled to the point where you need someone 24/7 to be with you, or you need to be somewhere where someone can be with you 24/7. You just have to face that reality. There's people who say, oh, no, I'll be so mad if my kids put me in one. Let's face the reality. If you live long enough, you may become mentally and physically disabled enough that you need to be in assisted living. Like I said, if I go, I'm going to make, a life out of it. I'm not going to be, all sad and looking out the window. It is what it is. And being sad about it isn't going to help you. In fact, it's going to make you, feel worse about it. So, realize that this can happen and make the best of it. None of us really want to move out of our home and into assisted living. Now, actually, there are a few people I know who actually did want that because it got to be too much for them. They couldn't mow. They had to hire people to mow. And, I know a lady who's like, I picked out my retirement place. I got it, and I'm going. And she did. And so, that's okay. That's fine. There are some people who want that because then that takes all the responsibility off of them. They have people that come in and clean every day. They have, nurses in case something's wrong, they're sick or whatever. So, sometimes that's a relief, to folks. So it just all depends on you. Life is what you make out of it. So if you end up in that situation, just make the best of it because there's really nothing else you can do about it, honestly. Except be depressed and sad. Support from family, friends, or community services can help minimize detachment and discontinuity. So, again, like I say, we go over, I we get groceries from my dad on Monday, and if he don't need anything, I'll still talk to him on the phone. And Wednesday we go take him, some food. If he don't want nothing, I'll still talk to him on the phone. I have an uncle that goes and gets him food or takes him out somewhere. And he goes out for breakfast. He's a McDonald's guy. He goes to McDonald's and gets his breakfast, and then sometimes he gets enough where it'll last him throughout the day. And he orders a lot of pizza and enjoys that. So he's still going, and we still keep in touch with him, so that he doesn't feel like he's over there all alone. Because I know when my mother passed away, he was feeling kind of lonely, and his brother was still around, and his brother has since died from cancer himself. So we try to keep up with him and make sure he's still okay and doing good, and feel like there's people there for him. And like I say, my mother-in-law has somebody up there visiting her just about every day. She was moaning and groaning to lady one day at lunch, and the lady said, "Margie, you need to be more grateful. Someone comes and visits you every day. Most of us don't have anyone that'll come visit us even once a week. You need to be grateful." And she was mad about that. She wouldn't talk to that lady anymore because she called her out. But it's good to keep up with your older folks and make sure that they're taken care of to a point. You want them to take care of themselves. You encourage that. But to make sure they're okay and nothing bad is going on, you gotta kind of keep up with things. Continuity theory, then, offers a reason to keep older adults out of institutions and in the community, and to help them live as independently as possible. And like I say, different cultures are different. In a lot of cultures, there's no such thing as assisted living. The older person stays in the family, and the family does whatever's necessary for that older person. My mother-in-law told a story about one of her great aunts who had dementia, evidently, because she used to wander off, and she might be wearing just a nightgown. But they got to the point where they tied her in her rocking chair. They just put her out there and tie her in the chair. And, we might look upon that as something terrible. But back in the day, when there was no assisted living down where they lived way out in the country where our farm is. And there was no such thing back then. So they were doing the best they could at the time, which was, in the 1930s. So, we all have heard the story about, the Eskimo families where once they get about 80, they put them on an iceberg and let them go. But that's, I don't know that is 100% true. I've heard some things. But, excuse me. In a lot of cultures, the elder just lives in the house. And the children move in, the grandchildren move in, and that's how it is. But like I say, if you're in a situation where no one can be there with you 24/7 who can help you or pick you up, and that's one of the things she kind of came at me about. And my husband, she wanted us to move in and take care of her, and I'm like, I can't pick you up. We'd be in the same situation. I would be calling, fire and rescue to come pick you up. We'd be in the same situation. We couldn't afford, and she couldn't afford to hire a younger nurse that could be there 24/7 to pick her up out of the floor. So we had to do what we had to do. Sometimes stuff is what it is. And like I say, there are cultures where that's never a thing, and there are cultures where that's always a thing. But mostly you should choose what's right for your elder, and do what's best for them and you and everyone involved. Everybody has to be on the same page, because there's going to be hard feelings if you're not. And it is good if you can keep them in their home and they feel like they're having a life, because like I say, people get depressed when they have to leave their home and they think they're being put in jail or whatever. But sometimes that's the reality. And like I say, if it becomes reality for me, I'm going to make the best of it. And that would be my advice to you. If it becomes reality for you, make the best of it. Don't sit there and be all sad and stuff. Like, oh, okay, it's my life now. I'm going to have a life. Because that shows that you have a positive attitude, and, you're going to have a happier life when that happens. So that is the continuity theory, is that your life needs to be continuous. You need to have a connection between your past, your, present, future, connected. And if you retire and you were happy doing something, you should find something else to do in a similar vein. And if you were happy doing nothing, then I guess you should continue doing nothing. But, that's where I'm going to leave you for today. And I hope that helped you figure out maybe a little bit more about why you do what you do. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. Thanks for watching. That's all for now. Until next time.